Hello, and welcome to Philosophy Fools, a bi-weekly podcast where a young father and old bachelor talk about life, philosophy, and staying curious. This week, Nephew Josh and Uncle Greg discuss the origin story for the podcast, what we want it to be, and what's in it for you. Hope that sounds good, because that's what we're doing.
Hi, I'm Josh.
Hi, I'm Uncle Greg. And
we are
Philosophy
Fools.
Well, we will get better at that. But Josh, what are we up to this week?
Well, since this is our first episode, I was thinking that we will run down what the podcast is all about. We'll talk a little bit about who we are, and then we'll go ahead and discuss the first bit of philosophy that we're going to talk about on our upcoming episodes. And then at the end of the episode, we will finish up with just talking about our past week, entertainment in the week, what I've been doing, what we've been doing with our families, and maybe a little bit of fitness.
Hey, that sounds great. Well, let's get started.
Sounds good.
Great. Okay. So Josh, say the idea for this podcast, for the Philosophy Fools podcast, was something of your brainchild. What were you thinking about when you wanted to do this, and what kinds of things do you want to get out of
it? I have quite a few answers for this, actually. I mean, so over the past 3 or 4 years, I've had jobs that I've been able to listen to podcasts and audiobooks, and I generally tend to listen to philosophy or just podcasts on how to become a little bit better at our lives. Mm-hmm. And recording with you has been, so you and I have discussed these things for almost 20 years now. At least you've been telling me about them and recommending different books and things like that. So I wanted to talk out the philosophy with you because you're somebody who I trust can kind of walk me through it. And then also I just a couple of personal goals as well. And I'll just say that to everybody. I mean, I want to get a little bit better at speaking. I would also like to just generally understand the philosophy that I'm reading. And those are, and then just to, hang out with you pretty much. And that's what I want to get out of this podcast.
Great.
What about you? I mean, you said yes to joining me. So what were you thinking?
Well, I mean, but first and foremost, I really like the idea of us being able to chat once a week, just because it's, life gets so crazy that a lot of times you can just slip by without talking to somebody for weeks. And this is a perfect excuse for us to just get together. And
absolutely.
In addition to that, if there's anything in my sort of rattled brain that could help you out, that I would love to be able to pass that along. I also just really like this idea of people. We live in a time, in a society where it's amazing how much abundance we've got in terms of just material things. Electricity, television, heat, refrigerators. Like most people in the United States have got access to things that should make life a lot better. And yet a lot of times I think people feel a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress and a lot of fear. And I think a lot of that just comes from how people are raised and how they're taught to think about being alive and think about what it means to be a person. And I think it's the reason that that a lot of psychology and psychiatry is so effective, is that it just lets people talk out loud. And that's what I like to encourage people to do just in their regular lives, is just to be able to have good conversations with the people around them. But it's important that people be able to trust one another, because I think that's the reason a lot of people don't talk to each other, is that they're afraid of judgment, or people sort of using things against them. And so I think that might be a good signal early on for people just to know who their friends are. And I don't know, that's a long way of saying, if you think about your life, you can have a better life. And that's where philosophy can help out.
Absolutely. It's almost like building a framework from philosophy, even though it's not something that you're going to always use. And I think that's the thing with philosophy is that, first of all, I'm not a scholar. So that's what I really like about this is that we're just talking about philosophy from the point of, just a couple regular guys just trying to figure out life. And so that reading different books, like say from Seneca or Aurelius, will give us different frameworks that we can use to navigate conversations or friendships or any kind of relationship at work or at home. And it's really good to just talk it out because I tend to listen to podcasts and then think that I know what I'm hearing or read a book and think that I understand it, but then I'm not practicing it or talking about it with anybody. And then I feel like it just slips away after a week or two, and then I'm back to square one.
Right. And it is. It's like a muscle, and both you and I really enjoy exercise and of a lot of different styles of exercise. And a big part of exercise is that it's through the repetition that you get your benefit and consistency. And I think that the same goes for any kind of mental muscle too, is that you can learn a lot of things. And like if I could no more recall the algebra I learned in high school than I could create a monkey in my kitchen. So that's so it's a use it or lose it kind of thing. And I think philosophy is just because like you said, neither one of us are academics. We just like it. We're just fans of philosophy. We think it's fun.
Exactly. This is our weekly philosophy workout.
Yeah, exactly. And and to your point, I think it's really, really important for people to realize that one of the things about philosophy, or at least from my understanding, is it's not about answers. It's not about permanent answers in your life. It's about arming you with really good questions to ask yourself as you go through life so that you don't ask bad questions that get you into trouble, but you ask valuable questions that at least allow you to live a life that you're choosing as opposed to a life being given to you to live.
So, we talked about that a little bit on our pre-call, and I was thinking, what do you mean exactly? Like, what kind of questions would you pose to yourself, like throughout the day? I mean, do you pose it throughout the day? I mean, I tend to do like a stoic practice that I've heard of. Like at night, I tend to think about the day and I ask questions like, did I do this right? Or how could I have done this differently? Is that what you mean by asking questions? Or, I was trying to understand that.
Okay.
And that was actually kind of tough for me to understand.
I think that there's a lot of different ways that that people individually and then societies and cultures approach this idea of what happens between birth and death. And in many cultures and many interpersonal relationships, people are trying to tell you that it's a preset series of actions that you do and you don't question. And as you go through each of those milestones, then everything's going to be okay. So that's, you go to school, you get a job, you get married, you have kids, you retire, you die. And what I mean by asking questions is the idea of, and it's the reason, I'm jumping ahead in our outline a little bit, but it's the main reason that I believe that the good place for us to begin is with Seneca's On the Shortness of Life, because what it does is it creates a framework for asking full life questions. And all I mean by that is if you want to see a lot of stereotypes of people who are in a very anxiety prone state, they'll say things like, well, what's the meaning of life? Or I want to find the meaning of life. And what most philosophy and what most people would say is that there isn't a meaning to be found. There's only a meaning to be given to life. So you get to choose what the meaning of life is. And that's where the questions start, is that if all of a sudden you wake up and go, and maybe it's the first time you've ever thought of it, and you say like, hey, wait a second, if I get to choose the meaning of life, how would I go about making those choices? And so,
Okay.
yeah, and so the questions that I'm referring to when we talk about asking better questions is, like, we live in a very, in many ways, for a lot of people, a very materialistic society where they will look at their car or their house and assume that that means that they are being perceived well by others, instead of what you really should be doing is like, I like my house, and like that's where your value should be placed, is the fact that the thing that you have protects your family, and it's a safe and comfortable and warm place for your family to grow. And you can see if you change those two little tweaks. One is, I wonder what other people think about me, and the other is, I'm choosing this path, and all of these things about making a wonderful home are under my control, whereas I don't control what other people think about me.
I know that exactly what you have been talking about is probably how I thought in most of my 20s, actually. And and it's exactly what you said. It's just what we are told, and what we're told from a young age, go to school, find a spouse and get married and buy a house and everything. And were big goals of mine. And then I think the big realization is that what I started thinking about is what really makes me happy. And I know I'm jumping around here, but I read a lot about people at the end of their lives. At the end of their lives, they thought, hey, so what were my big flaws, and what made me happy? And most people tended to say, like, they worried too much about work. They didn't spend enough time with their family and friends. All they wanted to do was make a lot of money and get a big house. And at the end of the day, none of that is what made them happy. And so that's really why I started changing my outlook a little bit. Do we want to talk about the book right now? And then we'll jump back to us at the end.
Oh, sure, absolutely. I think that what we want to do, and I guess we didn't tackle this in our upfront, but one of the basic frameworks for our podcast here is that we'll choose one piece of philosophy to be our point of discussion every week, or excuse me, we're looking to do this bi-weekly. So every other week, we want to be able to tackle some either full piece of philosophy text, or maybe a little chunk of a bigger piece. And so what we'll hope, I'm sorry, please go ahead.
Nope. So I was just going to agree with you, and that's what we're going to do is I mean, certain books and certain essays or passages, whatever we're going to read or listen to and present to everybody. We're just going to do that over a few episodes. I was just confirming what you were saying there.
Oh, sure.
Our first book, the book that actually you suggested for us, and you've already mentioned, was Seneca's On the Shortness of Life. And why do you think that that's the best place to start? I know you've already said a little bit, but why do you think we should start with that?
Well, it's got a lot to offer, in the sense that it is if you got to start somewhere, it's not complicated. It's not a very hard piece of reading. So it's an easy entry point into philosophy. Two, is that it asks very fundamental questions that everybody, no matter who you are, no matter what kind of life you're living or what kind of place you are in, everybody should ask themselves the questions that Seneca asks in this book. And his thesis statement is basically that if you know what you want out of life and you pursue it, you'll have a long life. But if you don't, that it'll be very short, or that your perception of it will be short. It's exactly what you're getting at when you say people on their deathbed being kind of uncomfortable with the death process because, hey, it's all gone. Oh, I am full of regret. And what Seneca would encourage everyone to do is to choose what kind of life you want to lead and actively lead that life. And if you're always in the pursuit of the life you've chosen in a very active way, then death can come at any moment. And the feeling that you'll have will be something along the lines of, well, I was doing the best I could at exactly what I wanted to do. So there'd be a real comfort in the onset of death. Whereas it's people who haven't been doing the things that they think that in the back of their minds are like, oh, I'll get to that someday, or I'll be nice to my family at some point in time. And and Seneca does a very good job of laying it out, because he's just writing a letter to a friend discussing what it means to live a good life. And so it's very easy to get a hold of. And I really believe that anybody who takes the time to read it will be able to, they'll get a lot of really good questions for themselves. And it'll help set what I believe a lot of people don't have, which is a value system. And that's another thing that Seneca's driving towards, which is you have to choose what's important, and then what's the next most important thing, and the next and the next, because everything can't win. Something's got to be at the highest level of your value hierarchy, and then you just have to. That's how we make decisions. It's like this is the most important thing, and this is second or third. Does that make sense?
I really like how the value hierarchy idea, and I think what you were saying about the book on the shortness of life is definitely going to be something, a great starting point. I mean, I don't want to get too into it today, but I actually, for most of these books, I only listen, quote unquote, even though I'll probably be saying I read them. The version that I listen to is the Vox Stoica audiobook version, Seneca on the shortness of life. And so from what you were just saying, the value hierarchy has changed my life. I think the first time I read this or listened to it was 3 years ago. And I've probably listened to it maybe 10 or 15 times over those years.
Mhm.
And it certainly is something that I think about quite often. And creating just a value system when I started down this journey was one of the first things that I did, and over the past 3 or 4 years has really helped my life tremendously when it comes to my family and my work. So I do think that this book is a perfect place for us to start.
Great. And one of the things that I'd like to suggest to people, if they're going to take this journey with us, is to really see this as a fun thing. Like, it's not homework to find your own personal philosophy. It's really kind of fun to just be exposed to new ideas, because you get to decide what you keep and what you don't keep.
It really creates happiness because it makes you look at life in different ways. And when you're saying that it is fun, it is, because you start to look at life as like a challenge is not a bad thing, and to overcome things, is not terrible. And so reading these different philosophy books really is just learning life and having fun and learning how to enjoy it better and how to not be stressed over little things and how to seize the day as cliche as that is. But I mean, it's very true to just seize the day every day.
Yeah, that's a funny thing about cliches is that they tend to be true, but they just get overused because people are so dumb. As I mean, and I include myself in that statement. That you have to repeat things over and over again, and then people get angry at you for telling them the truth all the time. So that's a cliche.
We're all fools.
It is silly, but now they can turn into philosophy fools, which is a better way to be.
Perfect.
But the one thing I wanted us to touch on in terms of folks coming along this journey with us is just to put a little organization around the activity of reading is to be it's basically three basic ideas. It's like while you're reading, you sort of make note of the ideas that jump out at you because they're going to be things that are more meaningful to you at that moment than to other people. So it's helpful to just like jot down or make a mental note of like, hey, this thing just popped out, and because it's going to be an indicator that it's something that you might want to keep working on. The other is does the text make you think about anything specifically about your life? Again, because certain parts will resonate with people at different points in their lives, and that's why it's a very unique activity for each individual to read a piece of philosophy because it's for you. It's not for everybody. It's a thing where it's just that dialogue between you and the philosopher is pretty much just a conversation. So when you hear things that mean something to you in that moment, make a note of that. And
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are just good questions that I will use also as I'm going through these different books that we're going to present to everybody.
yeah, okay. So I think that'll be good. And you had mentioned that you listened to the Vox Stoica audiobook. And if folks, and I know this is crazy, but if people actually want to read a piece of text, I am a real I'm a big fan of the Penguin Great Ideas series of the same text, and it's by Seneca, and the translation is by C.D.N. Costa. But if you just look up Penguin Great Ideas, you can grab that on Amazon. But more than anything, it's even though different translations will have kind of different emphasis on different things, the core text remains very much the same. So you don't need to get because we won't be discussing sentence by sentence. We're really discussing the larger ideas.
Absolutely. That sounds great to me. Now, do we want to say anything else about the book, or let's talk a little bit about ourselves and who we are, just to give everybody an idea of where we're coming from, basically.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I wish it was a more interesting answer in this age of COVID. But I'm a man in his late 50s. I'm a bachelor, happily so. I am currently working on trying to get some of my visual art skills back, which I was trained as an artist as a young man, but as a career in information technology and information architecture and user experience sort of took over my life for a good 25 years. I was a little mad that I'd lost all these wonderful illustration skills that I'd gained as a young man, and so now I'm spending the bulk of my time drawing every day and learning different techniques like digital coloring and things like that. How about you?
Well, I first want to say I've been following your art journey over the past couple years, and I really enjoy that. And I've always thought you were a great artist, obviously, but over the past 2 years, I mean, it's gotten significantly better. And so that's cool to watch. And I don't know if that's because maybe you are using digital, and maybe that's just better visually to look at, on posts on social media and whatnot. But I mean, from a non-artist, everything does look really cool, and it's awesome to watch your journey through regaining your skills.
I really thanks for that the positive feedback there. It's really I will take all the ego stroking I can get, but it's but it's a good one of the reasons that I wanted this to be a very public activity, and the reason I post so frequently on the social media is for just what you said, which is I want people to see how putting forth the effort every day makes change happen. It's not fast change, but you incrementally get better at whatever it is you're putting your focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's awesome to watch. All right, cool. Well, hey, so a little bit about myself.
Mhm.
I am in my mid 30s. I am a husband to my wonderful wife. We have been married for 5 years and been together for 10 years now. So even though I feel young, we have gone through a lot in our relationship. I'm also a father of two young children that keep me up all night and all day. I have a little boy. We nicknamed him Chewy, and he is 10 months old. And then I have a daughter, and she is 3 years old, almost four, and they're awesome. And honestly, have taken over my life, and I can't complain at all about it, except for the sleep, but I don't really mind it at all, in all honesty.
Now we that's something. It's a good thing for me us to mention is that we do record at 7 o'clock in the morning on Sundays because literally it's the only time that you can squeeze out.
I'm pretty good at time management, I have to say, but I have 3 hours of commute every day, and then when I get home, I really want to focus on the kids
Mhm.
and and just be present with them as much as possible.
Yeah.
And sure, I mean, we could do this at 9:30 at night on, Wednesdays, but I know you're well asleep
I'm
at that time.
long gone, brother.
And I have to wake up at 5 to go to work the next day,
Yeah.
but that's all complaining stuff, and I don't like to complain about that. That's just life.
It is well, and I think it's a difference between complaining and just stating the obvious, which is being a young parent is not a cakewalk for anybody, and
Exactly.
and that as just describing your real life is going to sound like some kind of nightmarish hell to somebody like me. But
Yeah, but I'm certainly not complaining
no,
though.
absolutely.
But I'll just
No, and I was just going to say, at least you're contributing something to the society, whereas I just sit back and consume and give nothing back. So,
well, we still enjoy your art. But
okay,
so some things that for me, I mean, so all that about the family, of course, I mentioned my job. I've been in the data center world for 7 years. I've had multiple jobs there. I do enjoy it for sure. And it's definitely an industry that's cool because I get to see brand new technology and I get to see how the internet works every day. So that really keeps me pretty interested in the career. I mean, any job can be tedious at times. I've also, for a while, I was working a lot. So I was working 60 up to 70-hour weeks because I have a second career as a personal trainer. And I've been a NASM CPT personal trainer for 5 years now, and also have a fitness nutrition specialist certification as well. And that's really a more of a passion of mine over the data center world. The data center world pays the bills, but the fitness world and helping people, I've helped multiple people lose over 100 pounds, and I can just see fitness really changes people's lives, and I love that about being a personal trainer. What I don't like about being a personal trainer is that one of the reasons that I'm doing this podcast is that I'm an introvert really, and to be a successful personal trainer, you need to really be great at sales. I mean, it's 50% sales and 50% being good at fitness. And I'm great at the fitness side and the sales side and talking with people, even though I can talk with people one on one fairly well. But just going out and cold calling people and things like that, I'm not too interested in. But fitness is really a big passion of mine.
Uh-huh. Well, that's a good example of something that, maybe that's where partnerships become helpful is, maybe finding people that are the extrovert and who love to do sales and giving them a percentage of the business that you wouldn't have had if they hadn't gotten it for you is a way to pursue things like that. It's tough because it is. If you feel like you have to be a one-man shop for everything, it's very hard to grow because there's only so much of you to go around.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely have thought about that, and maybe sometime in the future we may see a fitness business coming from me. But
Okay.
for now, with the kids, I'm happy as is.
Well, and you've got a great setup in your basement, so your kids and you and your wife can all sort of grow together in getting swole over time.
My goal is just to not hurt my back,
Uh,
not get swole.
you and me both, brother. I've got well, one thing. This the pandemic is a good example of be careful what you wish for, because all the time that I ever said, oh, if I only had more time, I'd totally lose all this weight. Apparently that wasn't true. And the weight has pretty much stayed on. I got like the pandemic 25 that I'm working on right now. But I'm glad that I've got the first vaccine, because when the second vaccine comes, I have literally been removed, like every conceivable excuse that I could say out loud without people laughing will be gone. So I'll have to be back in the gym and being a good. I get my 10,000 steps in a day, but outside of that, that's pretty weak. That's weak sauce when you think about it.
Well, 10,000 steps for most people is great, but I know you've been doing that for a couple of years, so it probably doesn't affect your body as much. So, and our body is just an adaptation machine. So,
Exactly.
so I mean, it's still a great thing to do.
But it doesn't seem
I
to
also have,
it doesn't seem to
I
adapt
have
to
my
the
first,
donuts I eat.
yeah.
Yeah.
So my wife has been making donuts as you speak about donuts, and I ate about 10 donuts yesterday. So even as a personal trainer, I fall victim to great food on a weekly basis.
Well, I think that's that may be a genetic trait. Maybe that's our next thing we could blame everything on is is a genetic predisposition to donut.
That sounds good. So usually at the end of these podcasts every week, we're gonna pretty much talk how we're talking. We're gonna wrap up with talking about our family and talking about entertainment, talking about fitness. You've already mentioned you're on a COVID-25 weight loss journey. I know for myself, I have lost 25 pounds actually since January 1st.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I've been happy about that. I probably gained 25 pounds yesterday, but we'll skip the weigh-in this week maybe.
Okay. It's the push and pull, the yin and yang.
Exactly. And that's why we're talking about philosophy, because I mean, even in our daily lives, I enjoy eating food, but we also have to be cognizant of our health. So it's a little bit of the push and pull, yin and yang.
It's one of the paradoxes I think that is vital to keep in mind, which is, hey, live your life like, hey, what if I died tomorrow, and what if I die at 120, and being able to live and realizing that you have to take both of those very seriously.
Exactly. Yeah, I love it. So we have Easter today. That's going on in the family world.
Absolutely. I'll be hopping in the truck about an hour after we hang up here, and I'll be seeing you and your lovely family, and my sister and her husband and your parents, I guess we could call them. And so that'll be a lot of fun. And I'm getting free food, so that's the most important thing.
It sounds really yummy. I saw a little bit of what she was doing, so
Oh,
I'm pretty excited about it.
and it is just to say it out loud. My sister Leslie is preparing an eggs Benedict casserole of some kind. So I'm fascinated to find out what that's all about.
That sounds yummy to me.
It really, really does. But and so outside, did Chewy or Addie do anything crazy this week that entertained you?
Nothing too crazy. With Chewy though, Chewy's 10 months and he's huge.
He's a
So
huge boy. He's a big boy.
he is. Yeah, he's a big boy. He's not 100% walking, but I can like let him go and he'll stand there for a few seconds. So I really like that. But he weighs about 30 pounds, and my almost 4 year old weighs like 35 pounds. So like that's like a huge difference.
Oh man, that is well, and so that and also you've had to be doing a lot of child proofing to the house with fencing and things to keep him from hurling his body down staircases and such.
We did a nice DIY project and we actually finally hung up our gate that we made, that my family made. My dad and my wife and myself all made it.
Oh,
So it's kind of cool.
excellent. And I did
And
want to, yes.
I was just gonna say, another discovery that I wanted to talk about my family this week, and that I think everyone would enjoy is just something that I've been working on, because parenting is hard for sure. And a big thing is how I've been talking to my thought for this week is how I've been talking to my kids.
Mhm.
So just small things like if my daughter leaves her sweatshirt on the floor, right? And I say, "Hey, pick that up," right? And so that's a normal thing that you would say, to a kid, and then I started questioning that. I was like, is that normal?
Yeah,
And then I thought about, hey, if my wife told me to just, hey, pick that up,
yeah,
then I would be like, excuse me? Like, that's not very nice.
yeah.
So that's what I've been working on this week with my daughter, is to talk to her in a better way, and not really just give her commands or anything like that, because I would not respond to that as a mid 30-year-old person very well. So
Mhm.
that was my thought of the week in my fatherly journey.
Well, I think it's an interesting thing because I do think that there's a tendency to not think of kids as, I guess the point is, as somebody who's not a parent, but somebody who deals with a lot of adults who might as well be children. I find that a lot of the challenges a misalignment of expectation. And so and I do think that like when you're working in a house with a bunch of different people, like yeah, wives and kids, that it's easy to think that everybody's on the same page about like why not throw clothing on the ground. I mean, I recall being very obnoxious to my mother because of, as a teenager, cleaning my room didn't seem particularly intelligent because I would just mess it up again. And that's why there was a door on the room, because when I left, I could close the door. And then my mother made it abundantly clear that her imagination of how bad it was so much worse than what it would be if my door was open, that I should just clean my room.
Very interesting insight. I
But
think, yeah.
yeah, but just to be totally honest, I honestly didn't understand why it was such a big deal to my mother. And it really had to be 35 years old before it really sort of dawned on me like, oh, right. She had a life she wanted to live. She didn't like the idea of her children being animals.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing raising kids, and I think that's something we'll talk about every week, and
Yeah.
hopefully I'll have new discoveries every week.
Well,
So are you
and before we wrap up, sorry, don't mean to interrupt. Before we wrap up, do you got any entertainment news this week? Anything been keeping you amused?
unfortunately this week I wasn't too much into any entertainment. I am rewatching Big Bang Theory, which is hysterical. I did not watch Godzilla King Kong, but I plan on doing that tonight. Did you happen to see that?
This is my extraordinary insight of the week, which is I did see it. And not only that, but I was told by a friend that I absolutely had to see Godzilla King of the Monsters if I truly wanted to understand the universe that we were dealing with. And I had an insight that we've never had in a non-COVID time. I like going to the movies, as you well know, the communal experience of it all. And watching Godzilla versus Kong, for the first time in my life, it struck me that movies like that are very much like booze. They're like alcohol. That in a crowd with a lot of people, it can be a lot of fun. But when you're sitting by yourself at home, it's kind of dark. But if you want to see monkeys and lizards beat up on each other, you cannot beat it. It's an excellent, excellent film.
It looks like an awesome action movie. I'm actually setting up a movie theater an outdoor movie theater in my backyard, and hopefully we'll have that up and running by our next conversation.
Oh, awesome.
So I'll be able to give you cool updates. So a nice 100-inch screen projector and everything. So I might watch a little Godzilla out there next to a campfire. So we'll see how that goes.
That sounds like a great time.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right, Josh. It's great talking this week, and I look forward to having our first discussion about Senecas on the shortness of life in 2 weeks.
Absolutely. So we will talk in 2 weeks, and we are the Philosophy Fools.
Yay!
Yay. All righty. Have a good one.
All right. Take care, pal. Hey, Uncle Greg here. Just wanted to thank you for listening this week, and be sure to join us next time when we begin our exploration of Senecas on the shortness of life. And a special thanks to Ted Onulak and Exit 10 for our music. You can check them out at exit10band.com. That's EXIT10band.com.